The phone conversation between fantasy veterans Bob Harris and Matt Waldman is a quick and dirty rundown of players, units, or teams from Sunday's games. Feel it or fuck it is our instant verdict on the fantasy value of a player or situation, not the ability, effort, or character of the player. This is just how two old-timers in this industry talk when they got a lot to cover in a little time.
Good morning, Matt Waldman. Hey, who the fuck takes 2 weeks off in the middle of the season? What's up with that?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not taking any time off. I think we just kind of said fuck the show for a couple of weeks, more than anything. We got other things to do. But I do appreciate the fact that people were saying, "Hey, where'd it go? Like, fuck this time off. Keep going." So with that in mind, Ben Violin, he had this thought on Twitter that the conference championships with Purdy, with Hurts, with Burrow, that they're an argument that you don't really need a high-paid quarterback, insert Patrick Mahomes.
I mean, they're not even an argument. They're evidence. I'm feeling that totally. And we can go all the way back to a Seattle Seahawks team that spent big money on Matt Flynn based on a very thin body of work to bring him in to be their de facto starter and drafted a kid named Russell Wilson. And the next thing you know, there's a competition. The next thing you know, Russell Wilson is their starting quarterback. The next thing you know, they're winning Super Bowl. So I think this is a blueprint. I think this is the way to do it. I get how markets work and that at some point you're going to have to pay for a quarterback. There is only like 7 quarterbacks in a world that needs 32. Okay. So the economics are driven by that scarcity of high-end players. But I think what we've seen demonstrated time and time again is the teams that are able to build around a young quarterback, or at least a quarterback on his rookie contract, or they have a chance to build that super high-end talent around them. That is what seems to me to lead to Super Bowls more so than the big money quarterbacks.
Yeah, I think if the argument is that you don't need a high-paid quarterback in the sense that that you can find a quarterback who's worthy of being highly paid and you don't pay him that because how you discovered him or how you were able to land him, absolutely. But, when I think of it as in Trent Dilfer, how many Trent Dilfers were there? Guys who were established quarterbacks who've played out their rookie contracts and are now considered journeymans making the Super Bowl. And
right.
that's where I would go and say, listen, yeah, you don't need a high-paid quarterback. You need a quarterback whose talent is commensurate with being highly paid, and you got the bargain. But otherwise, yeah, go ahead and tell me that, like, let's think of somebody real quick. Zach Wilson, that you could win with Zach Wilson. He's going to be on a second contract soon enough. No.
Right. No, so I agree with that. I just think that, it's an ideal for, I think it's proven to be a worthwhile endeavor, but you have to have that right young quarterback, right? I mean, who knew that Brock Purdy was that young quarterback until Brock Purdy was that young quarterback? So I think that's part of it, right? I didn't we can say the same thing, Russell Wilson. I can remember, when he came into training camp, no one expected him to, immediately compete for the starting role and play as well as he did. So there's something to be said for, players making the most of their opportunities.
Well, speaking of, making the most of their opportunities, it seems like Daniel Jones started to make the most of his opportunities. So how you feeling about him being worth $40 million a year?
I'm feeling it. That's what he's going to be worth. Whether, I know Ralph Macchiano at Fox Sports put that out there that, that it's not crazy to believe he's going to get $40 million a year. I think, for me, Daniel Jones, and we've kind of gone back and forth. I feel him more than you do. But I think you've come off fuck him. Yeah. I think you're off that. But, still some questions to be answered. But I think that's probably where he is at, more so than feeling him is like I feel the potential there. But it doesn't matter what I feel. It clearly matters what Brian Daboll feels. And I think Brian Daboll has demonstrated, although I thought his comments, after the final loss were interesting. He was a little less, complimentary, or at least is confident about the future with Daniel Jones. But maybe that's just a moment of a tough loss. I think afterwards, Daniel Jones, the things he said, the things Joe Shane said, the GM there, lead me to believe that they are going to keep him around. I can see, he seems like a guy you want to give like that 3-year contract, gives him a chance to, get the big money contract if he really proves himself. And if that was like 30 million a year or in that 30 to 40 million range, that seems like it'd be really plenty reasonable. They could transition tag him. I think the transition tag they're saying is going to be worth about 32 million this year. No one's going to give up 2 first-round picks and pay Daniel Jones to get Daniel Jones. I think they could get away with that. But either way, I think the longer-term deal is in their best interest, and I suspect they'll get it done.
Yeah, in 1 to 3 years, $40 million isn't going to sound like a lot of money. Anyway,
not anymore.
Guys who are at the top of the market are always not at the top of the market very long after. And I would say Daniel Jones would be absolutely just fucking nuts to try and go somewhere else, even if he gets lowballed a little bit in New York.
Yep.
Because if he goes somewhere else, yeah, I'm not feeling it. But I think that the
Right.
next steps for him, this is the chance to step into that point where you can say, you know what, he's worked into he's worked his way into becoming a good NFL starter. And I would say that he has had good moments as an NFL starter. He has gotten better as an NFL starter. He's on his way to being good as an NFL starter, but we need another season out of this guy. If we're gonna go from that standpoint, or at least I do.
We'll find out if my confidence that Brian Dable is the guy to get him there plays out as well. I mean, I think that's part of it for me as much as Daniel Jones. We've seen what his abilities and capabilities are. We've also seen the limitations, that come with his game, and I'm pretty sure Brian Dable smoothed out some of the limitations in my mind. So. He can probably smooth out some more if he gets a little more time.
Yeah, he's always been an NFL caliber quarterback. It's just whether he would be a good starter. I think that's the big thing with him. So Aaron Rodgers, we knew he was a good starter. Are you feeling that the Packers really are truly going to move on from Aaron Rodgers?
Yes, they're trying to figure this out. I feel that 100%. Just based on what we had a report over the weekend that their preference. I think Adam Schefter reported their preference is to move on from him, and I guess the Jets is the landing spot there for ex-Packer quarterbacks who have worn out their welcome in Green Bay. So the table's obviously set there. Maybe that's our, projecting everywhere Nathaniel Hackett goes. Green Bay quarterbacks are supposed to follow. It didn't happen in Denver. Maybe it'll happen in New York with the Jets or somewhere, though. And I do think that the time has come. It seems like everyone's kind of worn out their welcomes with each other and probably happy to move on.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's been a great run for him, and whatever you think of him off the field, I really just don't care. I just care about what they do on the field. When it comes to the analysis part of it, I don't like to throw in my personal feelings about a guy in one way or the other, because I'm sure Daniel Jones is a perfectly nice guy. He's probably perfectly lovely, but I've never really been a big fan of his. Whereas Aaron Rodgers, I don't know what he's like off the field, but I do know that he can still play. So, and some team is going to be thrilled to get him, and he's going to be over-scrutinized, and he'll be used to the over-scrutinized things, and that'll allow some of the younger guys to maybe slip below the radar a little bit so that you can take heat off of them, because, all the graybeards at the food trough with their typewriter, with their keyboards will be focused on asking Aaron Rodgers idiotic questions, because that's what they do.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Jonathan Taylor. Now, is he a top 5 fantasy asset? Are you feeling that?
I feel he probably merits that, right? There's a lot. We probably don't have enough information to make this date this, with great certainty. But I think his skills are still there. It seemed like to be a little bit of an outlier year for me. I would expect the volume to be there. I'm still chasing volume. That said, I might not be drafting running backs in that top 5 range at that point in the top 5 range. I'll probably be looking more at receiving assets at that point, outside the top 1-2 picks, and maybe, the way it plays out, maybe I'm more interested in receivers earlier. So, I think it just depends on how drafts play out. The ankle surgery, probably a good thing he had over last week, apparently last Wednesday, just a cleanup procedure, probably much needed. And it sounded like from his comments, it was something that, they found a lot of junk in there, basically, over the course of time. And I know up until this year, he had not missed even a practice. I talked to him a couple of years ago, and that was a great point of pride for him when, when I asked him about, people wonder about the heavy workload in college, et cetera. He says, hell, that's what I'm built for. That's what I do. And he made it clear he never missed a practice. That changed this year. And, maybe you're a little concerned about chronic issues with injuries. I don't think he's there yet in my mind. And I don't worry so much about injuries unless it's a chronic situation. So I may take some chances, but I'm hoping to get a discount.
Yeah, if someone dents that can, And if your league starts denting that can called Jonathan Taylor, you pick that dented can up, because that is definitely
Feel that.
Yeah, I am totally feeling that. And I'd love to be Michael Scott in this particular case and try and put my foot in the ultrasound, so that maybe I could maybe they can clean out some of my ankle too.
I feel like I'm at a disadvantage for not watching television shows every time I hear some arcane reference to show that I've never watched.
I know, but I've been telling you to watch The Office for years now. But
right, okay. I got to get through Seinfeld first. I'm told. I don't know.
You can skip. Listen, I grew up on Seinfeld. You can skip that. The Office is better.
I skipped all of it.
Yeah, there you go. That's great. So, Dolphins being all in on Tua Tagovailoa. How do you feel about that? And are they really? Have I missed that while I'm studying rookies?
They are. They have made it clear that, the recent reporting this weekend was they won't pursue Tom Brady because, for one thing, they don't want to pursue Tom Brady. And maybe a little history there they don't want to bring back up, but also because they're all in on Tua. And that's something Chris Greer talked about, at their season-ending press conference, was basically they have a great deal of confidence. I will note Tua is not going to play in the pro, whatever they call the thing they're playing this week, because he's still in the concussion protocol. Look, I'm not the doctor. I don't know everything that's going on here. I do know as I've covered this game, it's hard to remember players who remained in the concussion protocol this long who, usually they just went away. Right. So he's apparently not going away. And so they have a lot of confidence in him, or so they say. I'm like, are they though? I mean, can they? This is going to be a complicated question. So I don't want to either feel it or fuck it. I want to just kind of say, man, they're in a bad spot right now, because not just because of his personal health and future, all these things are very important. They're also a big business, and they have to figure out how to have a quarterback. And can you go into a season with a quarterback? Look, the attention this situation draws is part of this situation, right? So every time he goes down, and we saw it with Josh Johnson yesterday, the head bounces off the ground. Players, it happens every single game, right? Can you, is that how you go in with your franchise quarterback? I have serious questions about this. I thought he played great. I thought he had lived up to expectations when he was on the field. And I think if this is going to be an issue that the Dolphins are going to have to deal with, I wonder if that's something they actually want to deal with, their comments to the contrary notwithstanding.
Yeah, listen, as an evaluator, I'm totally feeling this, because I think that's code for saying we're comfortable with Skylar Thompson. Maybe with another year, we may see a big difference in what he did, because considering how well he played in the circumstances, I know not for fans, maybe not for fantasy players, but when you actually just watch the tape, there was a lot to be impressed about by Skylar Thompson, and some of the things that he could do that are hard to teach. The things that could be taught, and with more reps and with more time, which he didn't really have a lot of as a rookie, facing Buffalo's defense and a kind of a craptastic pass protection. Well, you got what you got statistically. But the Buffalo game, those receivers let him down. So I think when I look at this as a dynasty player, I say get Skylar Thompson cheap and just hold on to him on your practice squad if you allow 2 years. If you're in a deep league, you should probably just sit on the guy, because he's going to get his opportunity, sadly, because of Tua Tagovailoa and what's going on with him. And you wish him the best and like you said, I agree with everything you said about Tagovailoa. It's like when he's on the field, it's good. Now, there are some limitations with him in terms of certain types of throws that he can make. And he doesn't have the confidence to even try and target some of those. And there were teams that were able to stop him, like the 49ers, in terms of how they provided coverage so that he had to throw outside the hash or outside the numbers, and he wasn't confident in doing that. Skylar Thompson has the arm to be able to do that. It's just
fuck that. He plays with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. That's all you need to know, people. And also, as a regular customer of the rookie scouting portfolio, I already have my shares of Skylar Thompson because he was highly featured last year.
See, there you go. And you can get the RSP at mattwaldman.com for $21.95. It will be in its 18th year. You get a pre-draft and post-draft. Get a newsletter that comes with it June through December. And as my buddy Alex Brown, SMU's director of recruiting, would tell you, it is one of the 2 most purchased independent draft guides that are available on the market, and one written by a fantasy veteran who who used to be just excited by the sheer fact that his clear highlight was getting to write for a magazine that Bob Harris edited. So, yeah, I know. What's wrong with him? But there we go. Let's talk about, Tyreek Hill, his dynasty value. Are you feeling that, considering everything we just said?
Right. I kind of wasn't. So, I wanted to bring this topic up because I talked to Mike Fiala from Dynasty League Football. He's a sharp cookie, works for Trophy Smack as well. And he, I kind of was maybe like, I'm a little worried about the futures of these guys. He allayed my concerns with some common sense. Listen, Tyreek Hill is very good, right? I mean, he's a standout player. And there's a point where you just bet on talent, right? And again, the age isn't, we're not to the point where the age should be a concern for Tyreek Hill. I mean, have I seen him, nicked up at times and step slow? Maybe, but most times I've seen him about 5 steps faster than whoever is around him. And so I think so here's the thing, though. I think this is something that we mentioned already with Jonathan Taylor. If people maybe have those concerns, because what do we do as fantasy managers? We overblow all our concerns, right? Yeah. Everything we think. I mean, there's a reason why DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett were going, 5 rounds later than they should have last year because we were concerned they wouldn't have a quarterback. Well, they did have a quarterback, and it turns out, even not the greatest quarterbacks. In this case, Smith was better than expected. But those are the situations where we kind of overblow these things in our mind and think, wow, this guy can't do a damn thing. He's going to have an issue at quarterback. I just don't want to deal with it. Deal with it. Tyreek Hill's very good.
So listen, I'm working 1 a.m. till 5 p.m. basically these days as I'm working on stuff and I'm upside down. But when you said that you relayed and really you summarized the conversation you had, but part of me was looking around because I was looking for the bong that you two hit, when you had that question. And then I looked above you and I see this teapot that's got both ends. And I wondered if that might be helpful.
I'll tell you what brought it up. Was I was just, looking at the Fantasy Pros expert consensus rankings, their dynasty rankings, Jalen Waddle's over Tyreek Hill. And so, that's what brought the conversation up. And so Mike, for the record, is not, he's into Tyreek more so than Waddle.
Yeah.
And, and I think that's a fair debate, but I do think that it's easy for people to get, caught up in the moment. And I think maybe Waddle's value takes a hit as well if there are questions about the quarterback, right? I mean, I think people, overplay these issues at quarterback when it comes to these super high-end talents. And that was, I think, the point of the conversation was not to let that scare you away from super talented players.
No, but I think that's awesome. And I think it's an awesome point. And I would say at best or at worst, I would have them close to even and near the top of my board and in my top tier. So
where they should be.
Yeah, exactly. Brock Purdy as the 49ers 2023 starter, at least before we heard of the ulnar injury, that he played through, that he had to play through. So let's do this as a 2-4.
Okay.
First, let's address the injury. Like, what do you think about their decision to have to trot him back out there? Because all I saw were WWE memes of people wheeling somebody out in a wheelchair onto a stage.
I don't know what the choice was once Josh Johnson went down. Christian McCaffrey was clearly in line to be, and Kyle Juszczyk were kind of next men up as the emergency quarterbacks. And I mean, I don't know if that wouldn't have been a better approach. Honestly, I mean,
option.
Did it take long for the defense to figure out that young Brock Purdy wasn't going to be throwing any big passes, right? So, I'm like not necessarily feeling it, but I don't know how much choice they had. At least it gave them the ability to run some of their standard offense, at least or rushing portion of that offense, and maybe a more creative approach using more of the running backs and a little more Deebo Samuel might have been beneficial. But at that point, I don't know that it really mattered. They were. There are some games you're not destined to win. That was a game that they weren't destined to win.
Yeah.
But going forward, on Brock Purdy as a starter, let's say this is like just a strain or something not severe, not a ruptured tendon, and he's 6 weeks, he's Brock Purdy again. The 49ers are in an ideal situation, right? They have two young quarterbacks, as we mentioned, on these contracts. They'll have, I think, a grand total of still under $10 million in total in contracts to their quarterbacks heading into this season. That's a good spot to be in. Whether they believe it's going to be, Trey Lance, I don't think it's going to be. I think it's going to be Brock Purdy. I think he came in and demonstrated everything Kyle Shanahan wants the quarterback to demonstrate. And by that, I mean, do your fucking job. do what he tells you. Don't get too fancy. Don't make a lot of mistakes.
Me.
Right,
Yes.
right. And so I think that gives him the edge. Look, we haven't seen a lot of Trey Lance. There's a lot of people think, oh, they're going to have to trade him. No, they don't. They can afford to keep both these guys. And it turns out in San Francisco, it's a good idea to have as many quarterbacks as you can.
Yeah, I think those are great points, and I would agree with all of that. I mean, and I think that, part of the thing is that nobody wants to be cold about, well, why not have a Mr. Irrelevant 7th-round pick play through an injury if that's what you have to do? And if you waste his career by doing this in one of the most important games that you might have in the next 3 years, then you do it. And, I know there were a lot of coach Twitter was basically, well, we could spend 5 minutes just doing some sort of option thing. They could just reroute this and redo this. And I'm going, that's great. So now you're going to have more offensive line issues. You're going to have the star running back that you have working in a situation that he's not familiar with, which means that he's going to be overthinking things and likely to take hits or get injured in a way that is going to cost you more. So what's worse, Brock Purdy having a career-ending injury or Christian McCaffrey having a career-ending injury? I would argue by a mile Christian McCaffrey, as much as that we like what
fucking cynical. Look at you.
Well, yeah. I mean,
you're worse than me, and I didn't think that was possible. I love it.
Yeah, but that's the thing. So to me, it makes total sense that they did what they did, and it's it's unfortunate, but hopefully he'll be okay. They say it seems to be that they think that he'll be ready to throw by spring. So
right.
That's
like a strain and not a ruptured ligament. So
yeah, so no Tommy John.
MRI coming today.
Yeah, so
we'll know more by the end of the day.
We'll hope for the best on that. So what about Isaiah Pacheco? Is he the running back one in Kansas City next year and a clear fantasy leader for the Chiefs backfield? Are you feeling that, or are you feeling a draft?
I'm feeling that kind of a little bit, but the draft will be telling, right? I mean, in all the drafts I take part in, and I will be in a lot of them. I'm doing my first mock tonight on the air, so people listen to that on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio. But 10 p.m. But yeah, I mean, that's going to be my default position until it's not. Yeah. And I think he's earned that respect, whether, but I'm going to assume it's a similar role. Like, whether it's Jerick McKinnon or somebody else, there are going to be other pieces there and that are going to cut into his workload. And he's going to get some opportunities, but it's not going to be that true, featured back. But I don't know that there's a lot of those true featured backs. Hence, Jonathan Taylor remains a top 5 asset because he is still one of those guys. I mean, I think that's the thing here. With teams kind of moving away from that, one back that I am familiar with from my early days of fantasy football in 1986, when that era seems to be over. Teams are definitely mixing it up at running back. I think if you can get a guy like him who has that high end capability in a high end offense, you'd be doing fine. Just don't overpay for it.
1986, I was driving around a Toyota Corolla listening to 5150 with a friend of mine. Yeah, just getting my license. So, but I'll say this. I feel a draft. I don't feel as a heavy draft. I feel kind of a moderate to light draft. So there's going to be someone in camp that they'll compete with that.
Sure.
The fact that Pacheco got the receptions that he did last night is a telling thing because he was always a good receiver. The fact that they're starting to trust him more in that capacity means that he's at least locked down that role. I still think that there's a little ways to go with him as a runner. More as a decision maker than it is, and I haven't seen the level of power other than some isolated instances that I thought, yeah, that's what you need to see from a lead back, and I haven't seen a lot of that last year. So maybe the thing is the door's open, especially if, like, say, a kid like Zach Evans out of TCU, who I think has the potential to be one of the best running backs in this class, drops because of off-field type of stuff or maturity questions or whatever it is, or that he didn't get to be the man at Ole Miss this year. If that happens and he winds up on a team like the Chiefs, then yeah, Isaiah Pacheco might wind up being like the minor role of Jerick McKinnon to a guy like Zach Evans. But until that happens, I agree with you. Take the position of Isaiah Pacheco as the RB1 in Kansas City. Now, Travis Kelce, is he a top 5 fantasy asset, or are you qualifying this to a specific rule set?
Not qualifying this. He's the number 1 pick overall in your draft. No. But he will be. I will draft him number 1 overall. My radio co-host, Mike Dempsey on Sirius, is making a strong argument, I think, for drafting him number 1 overall. Look, if your goal is leverage over the field, Travis Kelce still gives you that. This year, he gave you that and a half. Yeah. Right? Per game. That's a big deal. That's why I draft Christian McCaffrey. He will give you player and a half value at his position. If Travis Kelce is giving you that, I think you can make the argument. Look, this is not daily fantasy football, but it's in season long. The objective is winning your positional battles each and every week. That's part of the way you win games. Travis Kelce lets you do that like no other player at his position, and it's not even close.
Hey, listen, if you think for yourself and you draft and you do a good job preparing for the rest of your draft, as much as you may spend listening to guys like us.
Fuck us, stuff, guys.
Yeah, exactly. Then I would totally agree with that idea. But if you're thinking this is the magic formula and you don't really do your research for anything else, then fuck that idea, because, you're likely to see that tank. But no, honestly, I'm with you. I mean, listen, I have Travis Kelce in every 1.5 PPR Dynasty league that I'm in.
Sure.
And it's been a lovely thing for the past 7 years. So
yeah, it's a no-brainer. But I'll just, I think if you're concerned about Travis Kelce falling, suddenly off the cliff, I mean, I have those fears too, and I'll probably act on them as soon as I see some signs of it.
Yeah,
we've seen no sign of it yet. And Patrick Mahomes is going to be very good for a little while. I'm going to just go ahead and go out on that limit as well. All right, rookie scouting portfolio guy.
But wait, let's just say this. Old tight ends who have been elite die a slow death.
Tony Gonzalez would agree with that.
Antonio Gates.
Antonio Gates, yes.
Yes, absolutely. So, okay, go ahead.
All right, so let's go to the rookie scouting portfolio portion of this program. I'm feeling that. So Bijan Robinson, 101 in Dynasty, yay or nay?
Yeah, he's a yay at this point. I don't think there's going to be anything to change that. Is he the next coming of the great running back? I think he's going to be a good running back in the league, which means that he has a chance to be a top 10 guy, maybe even a top 5 guy, depending on where he lands. But don't go crazy that you have to sell the farm to get 1.01 or else that you didn't have a good draft.
Right. So, related question, are you feeling or not, CBS Sports has Jahmyr Gibbs ranked ahead of Bijan Robinson.
Oh, fuck that. Fuck that. Fuck that. And I would imagine too, let me guess, did they mention Alvin Kamara somewhere in their description? Because if they did, or somebody, let me just put it this way. Jahmyr Gibbs and Alvin Kamara should only be mentioned in the same sentence when I mention it, in the sense that they both had played in the Atlanta area at some point during their careers before they became pros. That's about the most you can link with them, other than that they can catch the ball. Alvin Kamara is a special running back when it comes to contact balance. Jahmyr Gibbs is not. Jahmyr Gibbs is a good prospect. Now, you want to say DeAndre Swift? Okay. I could, somewhere between Justin Jackson and DeAndre Swift, I'm feeling that. Alvin Kamara, fuck that. 1.1 over Bijan Robinson. Please enlist and listen, we've all been there. I'm sure that there were people saying, please have your friends buy the RSP for Hakeem Butler. For 1.0, as the top guy at the wide receiver board. And I own that. That's fine. It is what it is. But I would say, yeah, you want your friends reading that. You want your competition reading that and buying into Jahmyr Gibbs.
Interesting. I remember. I'm old enough to remember when the rookie scouting portfolio had Nick Chubb ahead of Saquon Barkley.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Up to this point, I don't know. So let's say Deuce Vaughn is like the kid at the fair. He's got to be a certain size to get on the ride. He didn't make it up very high in the CBS Sports ride. Where's he ending up in your sports ride?
I think he basically ducked under the attendant and got onto the roller coaster, and rode it multiple times without a problem. I do think that he has a chance to be an exception to the rule, because his size is a big question mark. I'm waiting for the combine really to confirm some things, mainly because it's not that I want to see a time and go, oh, that's good enough. What I really want to see is the time, go back and watch the tape and see if I can logically pair the two things that I'm seeing. Because sometimes there's players who have fast combines and then you watch them on tape and you're like, they don't use their speed and quickness to the level that their time shows. And then sometimes it'll be the opposite. And so you want to kind of see some things match up. But he's a guy that's going to be he's kind of a fit-based player. But when you look at his actual skills, in terms of running between the tackles, there's a lot of Christian McCaffrey to how he makes decisions and how he works in tight creases. So I want to feel it. And right now, if the answer had to be something, it would be I'm feeling it right now.
Michael Mayer as tight end 1. Feel it or fuck it?
Fuck it.
Oh.
Fuck it. No, I'm feeling it okay. I think that if I'm not going to argue with anybody who does go with that, but I do think that Dalton Kincaid, if you're looking at strictly what you're going to get from a receiver, Dalton Kincaid is more explosive. I think he's better at the catch point. I think he's a more intriguing player after the catch. And I think his ability to block may not be as good as Michael Mayer, but it's not going to be so bad that's going to hold him back for a long period of time. And any team that gets Dalton Kincaid is going to be thrilled with what they can get out of him as a receiver and after the catch. There is some I scout Travis Kelce and like Travis Kelce a lot. There is some Travis Kelce to this guy. I would agree that is probably going to be the proper stylistic comp for Dalton Kincaid. So yeah, Michael Mayer, top 3 tight end easily. Number 1, you could make an argument against him, and I'm probably going to do that.
Dalton Kincaid, no relation to Reuben Kincaid, manager of the Partridge Family, which tells you the last time I watched television. There you have it. So here we go. Let's do something controversial. Bryce Young to the Bears.
Fuck that. Yeah. But I'm feeling it if Justin Fields, as Russ Landy said on our Scott Talk show a couple years go by when I'm studying film, is that you want to see Justin Fields hopefully sell the idea of that possibility that they really do want Young and that he's got to compete with them so that they can get some compelling assets in return for that first round pick. But to me, if I were a GM of the Bears, I would much rather get fired for not taking Bryce Young and Justin Fields not working out after loading up the team with good talent.
I feel that.
And loading up the team with good talent around him because he made progress. And while Bryce Young turns into the next Montana Breeze-esque short guy who can kind of move around and place the ball really well and buy time and also play with a lot of efficiency, and maybe that's all a part of his game. I think he's a good young prospect. Right now my grade is probably similar to how I graded Tagovailoa and Burrow in terms of the range of grade that he's going to have. So he's a good prospect. And I definitely had him I have grade him higher than what I had Justin Fields. But I like Justin Fields, and I think where he's headed, the idea of you dumping that by the side of the road is just unbelievably foolish at this stage. But selling the idea that you're going to do it, and especially with being the Bears and the history of them being unbelievably foolish, you hope that people bite that and believe it.
To tie this all together, young quarterbacks on rookie contracts, surround them with some talent. Spend on that. Works out well, Bears. Give it a try. Okay, one more. The college all-star games. Worthwhile? Yes, no, feeling fucking what?
They're worthwhile networking opportunities. They're great for teams because they get to interview the players. They get to do some specific things that maybe they want to see the player work out and do to a degree. And for media, again, it's a great networking opportunity. Get to meet people, hang out, have a good time. But in terms of practice, to be honest with you, I'll be back to cover them. I'll continue to talk about what to look for and what not to look for with practices down the line. But if I'm being, abundantly honest, fuck the practices. They're not that worthwhile. Unless you're going to study the tape all night long afterwards, which I tend to do. But even then, it's minimal. You get some film. Go to YouTube if you want to. Check out the film. That's going to help you a whole hell of a lot more than what you're going to get in practice, unless you're looking for. One caveat will be wide receiver press release drills for wide receivers and tight ends. There's like a handful of drills like that are kind of worthwhile, but it's you're talking about like 3 needles in a haystack.
Fair enough. Yeah. I don't go, so I don't know. Someone was asking me about this earlier today. I thought it was interesting. Anyway, so there you have it, people. Feel it or fuck it. By the way, Kellen Moore looks like he's heading to Los Angeles to run the offense there now that he's parted ways with the Dallas Cowboys. So we'll see where that ends up. I'm kind of feeling Justin Herbert because I want that discount. You know me, Matt. I'm a cheapskate. Come on, people, get happy. That's Parker's Family reference. Go look it up.
Okay. Bye.
Love you.
Love you.